This video contains light spoilers for most of the Toaru series throughout, but nothing I consider detrimental to enjoying the series. When slightly more significant spoilers do come up, I'll drop additional spoiler warnings so you can skip that segment if needed. The Toaru Multitudies Index series, and the broader Toaru franchise with it, are now 20 years old. This series has somehow been continuously releasing new content for the majority of my life now, and it shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. At some point, the series became a massive hyperfixation of mine, and discussing the series has become one of my favourite pastimes. It's almost a cliche for me at this point. So, to show my appreciation for 20 years of Toaru, I'm going to do just that, and spend some time rambling about this series and reflecting on why it's so special to me. I'm Sofalodia, and you're watching System, a new YouTube channel I've created specifically to share my thoughts on the Toaru series with anyone who would like to hear them. This is the first of hopefully many Toaru videos I plan to put out on this channel, so feel free to stick around if that sounds interesting to you. One thing that really pulled me into the Toaru series when I first learned about it back in 2009 was the strength of its world building, offering something you can't really find anywhere else in other manga or anime. Academy City is a boundless sandbox for exciting storytelling, with many different layers and angles to it, and that flexibility allows author Kamijou Kazuma to use it to tell all different genres of stories quite easily. On one hand, you've got the utopian city of science that can effortlessly play host to the light-hearted, comfy vibes you find when the kids are just enjoying their time together in the city. There's a reason the chill vibes of Railgun Season 1 are so popular with audiences and serve as a great introduction to the broader franchise. But right alongside that, you've also got the seedy underbelly of Academy City in the dark side, demonstrating how the utopian facade of the city is built upon a foundation of human experimentation, dehumanizing gentrification, and billion-dollar corporations pitting literal child soldiers against each other in paramilitary skirmishes. This city is fucked up in all the same ways as any cyberpunk setting, with all the political intrigue you'd expect of a city like that. The juxtaposition between the chill vibes utopia and the dark side of the city makes for some incredibly juicy drama and spicy political commentary, like with how we see two worlds collide when the dark side mercenary Frenda befriends Mikoto's friend Saturn. And you'll find plenty of political commentary on how the higher-ups of the city manipulate and use the students as fodder for their grand machinations, and even some commentary on police brutality we see through DA and everything going on with Operation Handcuffs. It can feel like an incredibly bleak and depressing setting at times, but no matter how dark things get, there's this warmth and optimism that pervades the story throughout. Because at the end of the day, this remains the one and only home of our characters, and so they nonetheless manage to find strength in the communities and families found within the walls of the city. Finding that warmth in the darkness is an aspect of this series that really resonates with me personally. But what really gets me cheering are the moments of victory the students achieve over the systems that seek to oppress and control them. Nothing is more cathartic than seeing Hamazura getting a leg up on Academy City to protect his loved ones, or watching Touma punching a member of the board of directors in the face for continuing to use and abuse the children he's meant to be protecting. And I can't overstate how cool it is how Toaru handles continuity. There's this tangible feeling of an evolving world, with many intersecting storylines all elegantly feeding into and building upon one another, creating the impression of a living, breathing world between the pages, where every action has an impact far beyond the immediately noticeable. The series is split into many side stories that all exist in parallel to each other, following different casts of characters, and some even retelling the same key story events from different perspectives. By my count, Toaru features not one, but 7 main protagonists. Index alone has Touma, Accelerator, Hamazura, and Kuroko. Yes, I am counting Kuroko since she's been a protagonist of 2 Index novels now. And we also have Mikoto for Railgun, Hokaze for Astral Body, and Shokuho for Mental Health. And this number can go as high as 20 or so if you include all the smaller side stories and groups of protagonists like Item and the Agnes trio. So through all these different sets of eyes, we have a myriad of varied perspectives to view the story through, each from very different walks of life. And being side stories, these chapters all take place at different points on the story's timeline, with many events occurring concurrently and influencing each other in really interesting ways. Here's one example that really illustrates the interconnectivity of this continuity. To talk about this, I'll be alluding to spoilers from the Battle Royale arc of Index, the Toaru Kagaku no Dark Matter one-off manga, Volume 1 of the Toaru Anbu no Item novels, and the Indian Poker arc of Railgun. So if you're especially sensitive to spoilers, skip to the next chapter of the video. The Dark May Project was an experiment conducted in the past to implant Accelerator's psyche into child errors, or orphaned espers, in the hopes of influencing their personal reality to create another level 5 esper like Accelerator. 2 subjects of the Dark May Project were Kinohata Sae and Yuzuriha Ringo. We first learn about Accelerator's backstory in Index and Railgun. We see in Toaru no Item how Kinohata was pulled from the Dark Maid project to join the Dark Side organization Item. And in that same volume, a tragedy orchestrated by Aleister Crowley unfolds with the apparent goal of manipulating Item, particularly Mugino, and keeping them working for the Dark Side. In Toaru Kagaku no Dark Matter, Kakine befriends a recently escaped Yuzuriha, and we later experience a similar tragedy that once again seems to have been orchestrated by Crowley to manipulate Kakine this time. In response, School formulated a plan to obtain information about Academy City's top secret surveillance system in the hopes of gaining leverage to speak with Aleister Crowley, perhaps to seek vengeance or perhaps to put a stop to his machinations. This results in School placing a mark on Saturn, who they mistakenly believe to have information on the tweezers they need for their plans based on her online search history regarding Indian poker, leading to School's Yumi Arako hunting down Saturn in Railgun, who is coincidentally protected by Frenda, a member of their rival organization Item. Later in Index on the 30th of September, Kihara Amata, the head researcher of the Dark Maid project, is brought in by Crowley to fight Vento and Accelerator. Accelerator's violent rebellion against Amata and Crowley is used by the city's Dark Side to blackmail him into fighting for Academy City's interests under the Dark Side organization group. This conflict would eventually boil over into the Battle Royale arc of Index, where the 3 level 5s, Accelerator of Group, Mugino of Item, and Kakine of School are all pitted against each other in a violent conflict. And perhaps this would have ended in a much more gruesome and irreversible way, if not for the efforts of Last Order and Hamazura, reaching out and trying to save others from themselves. And none of this would have even been possible if not for Accelerator saving Last Order in the past, or for Touma confronting Hamazura in the Skill Out Uprising and leaving an irreversible impact on his life path. As you read all these interconnected side stories, not only does it become clear that all 3 groups are connected to the Dark Maid project in different ways, but it also becomes increasingly apparent that all 3 of the level 5s were seemingly all manipulated by Crowley to eventually fight each other. It's not fully clear why Aleister would want to do this, but his influence can be seen everywhere once you start looking for it. Did he see these espers as no longer serving any use for him and wanted them to kill each other to eliminate a potential threat against himself? Or was he hoping for some other outcome, like advancing their powers to create a level 6? This is just one of many examples of similarly complex webs of continuity spanning the entire Toaru franchise, and Kamijou is inviting the reader to connect the dots and form their own conclusions. It's a level of world building where every event has a noticeable ripple effect on the rest of the series, the kind of inter-series continuity that's only possible through each of these stories sharing one singular author. And it just really enhances my reading experience when I observe these connections unfolding in real time. Moments from the series' past can gain all new significance and meaning when you see how the life of a different character has influenced events you've already read about from a different perspective. And who knows, maybe unfolding these webs of continuity might just reveal hidden information or character motives. So up to this point, I've primarily spoken about the setting of Academy City, but within the Toaru series exists a whole Earth outside the confines of Academy City, and an entire world of magic that the residents of Academy City scarcely know about. So let's move our attention beyond the walls of the City of Science to the magic side beyond, and have a talk about why I find it all so damn fascinating. So at first, the magic of Index was extremely confusing to me compared to the more or less straightforward Esper abilities, but I couldn't shake the allure of this sense of mystery around it. In most anime and manga, magic is extremely formulaic and usually comes down to copying the homework of video games that have been copying each other's homework since the day Dungeons & Dragons first took the world by storm. For example, there's this idea that magicians must wear robes and big pointy hats, and that they cast magic by chanting a brief incantation and pointing their staff at things to make fireballs explode out until they run out of mana. But magic in the Toaru series immediately felt like it had a lot more thought put behind it than any other fantasy fiction I'd experienced. When you first hear about the idea of a story where magic and Esper powers collide, many people might consider if they aren't just 2 names for the exact same thing, because that's usually how it works in video games. Psychic powers are just a scientific name for what we might call magic in a fantasy story. But to differentiate magic from Esper powers, Komachi Kazuma instead sought inspiration not from other fantasy stories, but from the history of magic in our real world. Because whether you believe it in or not, magic and the esoteric have been practiced in our world for thousands of years, so there's a wealth of untapped potential that most magic in fiction just ignores for some reason. And so you may ask, what specific lore does the magic of the Toaru series tap into? Maybe pagan magic? Wicca? Norse folk magic? Jewish Kabbalah? Hermeticism? Astrology? Aztec mythology? Taoist or Buddhist esotericism? Japanese onmyodo? Alchemy? Hindu mythology? Christian mysticism? As it turns out, Toaru draws inspiration from all of the above and more. Utilising such a rich and varied suite of mythologies and cultures to represent the magic side in the Toaru series gives it a real feeling of depth and authenticity that very few authors of supernatural fiction can claim to match. It's messy at times, since not all of these ideologies or mythologies are designed to be compatible with each other, but Toaru is well aware of this and honestly embraces it through how magicians from different cultures and backgrounds contrast each other, and even through concepts like the clashing of phases. The magic is not something I originally came into the Toaru series for when I first got into it, but as I've grown older and my fascination with anthropology and the esoteric has only grown and matured, I know I can thank the Toaru series for helping build that fascination within me in the first place. So let's talk a bit more about the magic side, with some of my own interpretations thrown in on top. The magic side within the Toaru series stands in contrast to the science side represented by Academy City and its espers. By my reckoning, if the science side represents materialism, that is, the idea that everything in the universe can be understood as physical matter and energy, then I believe the magic side represents idealism, the view that everything in the universe is made of mind or spirit or consciousness. So if Kuriko wants to use her power to teleport, she just needs to perform mathematical operations in her mind on how to move her body through 11 dimensions of space to reach her desired coordinates in 3D space, and her gifted Esper power does the rest. It's simple and straightforward and easy to understand. For a magician to produce a similar effect though, they need to draw upon their knowledge of a particular mythology or cultural narrative they affiliate themselves with, construct the correct symbols and the correct arrangements together with the correct magical tools to refine their own life force into magical energy, and then through their will can a magical effect be manifested in the world. Put another way, magicians, as idealists, produce effects by first envisioning the universe's mind, and manipulate it by wielding cultural narratives, myths, and ideologies, and building associations or connections between previously unrelated things to transfer energy between them and produce physical effects between these now connected things. Much like the neurons of an Esper's mind firing off and connecting to produce their own powers. This is one way of explaining the idol theory I've come up with. In essence, Espers produce effects in the macrocosm of their physical environment by using the microcosm of their own mind, while magicians produce effects in the microcosm of the physical environment by manipulating the macrocosm of the consciousness of the universe. An Esper simply uses the powers they have at their disposal, whereas magicians are fundamentally powerless individuals who must dedicate their lives to the craft of manipulating the laws of the universe to give themselves power, through time, effort, and sacrifice. An Esper needs only the microcosm of their own mind, while a magician requires an intimate connection with the macrocosm of the universe and mankind as a whole, drawing upon the shared history of mankind to cast even a simple magical spell. Therefore, to function effectively, magicians form groups that share a sense of purpose and ideology as a basis for their magical practice, which allow them to draw upon that basis to improve their magic collectively. These groups can vary in scale from small cabals to global organized religions. In this sense, Espers feel a lot more individualistic than the magicians of the magic side, since once they receive the Esper development curriculum, all they need for their powers are themselves. But there's also a sense of artistry behind the magic side that contrasts the numbers and data-focused science side. Magicians, as Toaru describes them, are all eccentrics who have left the common sense of the world behind to perfect their art, usually a result of some kind of trauma, when they realize they couldn't accomplish their goals through ordinary methods. They are aestheticists who dedicate themselves to following their own unique path through life, doing things in a way they believe only they can do, not caring how others may perceive them. They are very emotionally driven and romantic, often taking great pride in their own emotions and passions, not seeing them as hindrances or distractions like the science side might, but rather as a force that drives and propels them. They decorate their bodies in ways that best represent their souls, and in so doing improve their magic. They come together with other like-minded eccentrics to form communities of support and share with each other the resources required to continue pursuing their goals and perfecting their art. But if at any point it becomes apparent that working together with someone is antithetical to their goals, a magician won't hesitate to go rogue and start again from scratch. There's a sadness to magicians, but honestly, they're incredibly relatable? I feel like I'm just describing the LGBT community here. And thinking about it, I guess it does track with reality. Many real-world magic cabals are likewise just traumatized, neurodivergent or queer people gathering together to support and uplift each other when the rest of society is deemed their very nature unsightly or unacceptable. So no wonder I relate so hard to the magic groups in Toaru. Every queer friend group has a traumatized bisexual with an abyssal demon as a headmate, the quirky astrology freak who plays the mother of the group but is secretly dead inside, and the tired old furry. To give a practical example of all this magic talk, take New Light, abbreviated here as NL. They are a Cabal reserve army, much smaller and less organized than a complete magic cabal, but serve a similar purpose as a gathering of magicians. The group is made up of 4 girls, each united under a common goal to serve the United Kingdom however they see fit, while doing so as stylishly as possible. The basis of their magic is Northern European folk magic, or in practice, Norse mythology. Each of them wields a polearm-like spiritual item called a steel glove. This spiritual item was created by drawing correspondences between the design of the item and 3 of Thor's treasures from Norse mythology: the belt Meingjord, the iron staff Gyrivola, and the iron gloves Jarngrepa.
Your spear. From its magical glyph, I'm sensing it's of the thunder god Thor.
Don't be so naive to immediately think it's Mjolnir. It's not. The thunder god has used other weapons before, at least once. After dissecting the accounts, we unearthed these magical items. The steel gloves. As it turns out, these weapons are much easier for women to use!
Is it grasping something? Like wind from the air? Dust particles?
Quote, "The only traits the steel gloves reproduce are the destructive power of the iron staff the female giant used as a weapon, the strength augmentation from the belt, and the applicability represented by grabbing. Due to the myths and importance of Jarngrepa being lost to time, New Light are able to layer on their own interpretation, tying the gloves to the general idea of grabbing. By bridging these correspondences of grabbing to glove, glove to Jarngrepa, and Jarngrepa to the steel gloves, the steel gloves can be wielded by New Light to magically grab things that might not normally be possible for a human to grab, like dust particles in the air, compressing them and causing a dust explosion as an attack. The method is different, but through this attack we can see obvious parallels to both Accelerator's power and the dust explosion he caused, and to the tweezers, which are a device that can be used to grab particles. Magicians can't just reproduce the spells of their enemy off the cuff, because every spell has its roots in a mythology or ideology, and manifests itself through the refractions of a magician's unique worldview. Each magician has their set of tools, and while they can modify and develop them, they can't just swap to another religion or mythology to cast a different spell without completely betraying their own life experiences, worldview, and culture. Conversely, Academy City is basically a factory for mass-producing power uses, and all sorts of powers can be produced from introducing different students to the same curriculum, so ideology or artistry doesn't seem to play a role. That said, the kinds of powers that individual espers and individual magicians produce may in fact both be rooted in some deeper sense of identity. Like with the concept of the personal reality that forms the basis of an esper's power, this deeper sense of identity and reality might just be the defining factor that separates a fire user from an electricity user, or a level 0 from a level 5. But I think I'll save my thoughts on that for another video down the line. But you can see why this shit is so fascinating to me, right? Every encounter with a magic user in this series is another opportunity for Kamijou to engage in some fascinating philosophical or anthropological discourse. It's a never-ending banquet for someone like me. So with all that established, I'd like to talk a little bit more about another aspect of the series that I don't think gets nearly enough appreciation, and that's Kamijou's love of writing mysteries. Of course, the Toaru series is about as far from a traditional detective murder mystery series as you could get, and nobody's going to be tagging Index or Railgun as part of the mystery genre on my anime list. But nonetheless, Kamijou seems to love sprinkling mysteries throughout his series to keep readers invested in thinking. This comes in 2 forms: large series-spanning mysteries, and smaller mysteries that are introduced and resolved within a single volume. The large mysteries can feel like following a trail of breadcrumbs Kamijou has been setting up for decades, and many of these require untangling these webs of continuity between the different stories to fully grasp. These include big questions like the motives of Aleister Crowley, the true nature of Touma's right hand, the identity of the 6th level 5, the true nature of Esper powers and level 6, and many other big questions surrounding Academy City and the Esper curriculum. Smaller mysteries come and go each volume, and they serve to guide the protagonists forward. In Railgun, this usually takes the form of Ueharu and Kuroko working together with Makoto and Saten to unravel various crimes and conspiracies in the city, introducing a sort of criminal investigations dynamic that really lends itself well to these bite-sized mysteries in the city. Each mystery solved provides more insight into the inner workings of Academy City, which can even feed into the large-scale mysteries of the series. With stories following the dark side like Item, we get a similar crime mystery flavour, though instead of a criminal investigation story, it's instead told from the perspective of fellow criminals and gives more of a crime drama vibe. And with Index, at least when dealing with the magic side, these mysteries take on an anthropological flavour, and often require real-world research to fully solve. Kamijou clearly loves researching history and esoterica, And throughout his stories, he's constantly name-dropping key words, historical events, people, and even literature that readers can investigate on their own that may prove relevant to answering the mysteries he proposes. And this applies to characters themselves too. There's a reason Index Librorum Prohibitorum is a character in the story. She's a walking encyclopedia Touma can consult to figure out the trick behind an enemy's magic. Just like how the reader might similarly consult the internet or a library for information. Every now and then when I'm reading Toaru and I encounter a term I've never heard before, I'll stop reading for a minute to look it up and get some background info. And often, just a little bit of research can help me get the leg up on Touma and figure out some key to the mystery of the enemy's magic before Touma and company are able to figure it out. On that note, if you want to spoil yourself on future Toaru plot reveals, just read some of the literature of the real-life Aleister Crowley. You're bound to find some info in there that becomes super relevant later in Index. Kamijou loves leading his characters off to center the truth with red herrings, while also planting vital clues in plain sight for readers to figure out. A really notorious example of this can be found as early as Volume 3 of the Index novels. Spoiler warning for the eventual reveal at the end of Index Old Testament / Index Season 3. Why did the researchers obtain the child Mikoto's DNA map in the hopes of cloning her if she only became a level 5 later in life? It's extremely easy to overlook in the moment, but if you stop and think about it for more than a second, it doesn't make much sense. And as we later find out, this small oddity hints towards a much more sinister truth with the parameter list. Solving mysteries is fun. It's by no means a prerequisite to enjoying Toaru, but for people like me who love thinking and learning and solving puzzles, it's an often ignored side of Toaru that I really think deserves a little more appreciation. Thank you so much for watching this far in. We've still got a bit more to get through, but I want to include an intermission here to chat with you all before we get into talking about individual characters. Mid-video intermissions are cool, and I think I prefer them over throwing all the housekeeping at the end of the video. The script ended up being pretty rambly and unstructured, jumping from topic to topic, but I hope it's been interesting and enjoyable to hear my perspectives on this series, and the little ways it's managed to maintain my interest and fascination for over a decade now. This is my first time doing anything resembling a formal video essay structure, so I'd love to hear your feedback, positive or negative. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a tip at my coffee. I have no intention of monetizing the videos I produce on YouTube, but any tips are enormously appreciated and will help incentivize me to make more videos like this in the future. And you'll even get your name on the screen, like Raiti Roan and Naoki Saten here, who both tipped me for my Academy City video. Thanks so much to both of you for your generous support. It's really encouraging to know people appreciate the work I put into that one. It very nearly didn't get finished, but I'm so glad I managed to get it out the door. Alright, with that said, let's get back to the video. Kamijou Touma is a very aspirational character for me. Maybe it's weird for a 32-year-old NB to consider a high school anime boy to be aspirational, but to me, Touma represents the very best humanity has to offer. He's a paragon of virtue and optimism, which is interesting considering the world of Toaru is honestly pretty bleak and horrible at times, much like our own world. But the brilliance of Touma as a character lies in his simplicity. The boy isn't dumb per se, he's very introspective, perceptive, and often shows strokes of genius through some of the strategies he's employed to overcome overwhelmingly dangerous situations.
Hey there, terrorist! Ever heard of thermal expansion?
But unlike a more cerebral character like Accelerator, who is more inclined to carefully think things through before acting, Touma is a much more simple and straightforward character, someone who would sooner charge headfirst into a dangerous situation. Not out of stupidity or a lack of foresight, but rather because he has an intuitive sense of what he must do in a given situation. In other words, he's an expert at following his heart, or his true will, which is very interesting considering he lost his memory at the start of the series.
Listen, son. Are you sure about what you're doing? You don't remember anything, do you?
No, I don't. But for some reason I can't explain. The last thing in the world I wanted was to see that girl cry. It must sound really strange to you. I'm not really sure what this feeling is exactly. But it's there, even if I never remember the reason why. And that's okay, because I don't want to let it go. So, I guess one memory was left to me after all, huh?
Your memories are dead. They were destroyed with your brain cells. Where do you think this remembered feeling is coming from? Where is it stored?
Well, Doctor, that should be obvious.
Hmm?
From my heart. Wouldn't you agree?
That heart of his has been guiding his actions from the very beginning, even if when at first his own heart was a mystery to him. If some plan doesn't feel right to him, he won't go through with it, no matter how many people try to persuade him that it's the right thing to do. Conversely, If he's convincing himself that something is the right thing to do, he won't wait long before charging headfirst into any situation, no matter how dangerous or complex. His heart guides his actions, sometimes to places others would consider baffling, like reaching out to save a villain who was just trying to kill him moments ago. The politics or optics of a situation don't matter to him, because Touma trusts his heart to guide him above all else. He believes that if he follows his heart, everything will work out okay, because he believes in himself and he believes in the inherent goodness of mankind. Despite the indifferent cruelty of the world around him, his faith in people is usually proven correct. Even if the ideals he espouses may seem far too simplistic or naive to some, they nonetheless manage to resonate with people who desperately want him to be right, and that can in turn cause his ideals to become true. Because if you believe in someone, even if they don't deserve that belief, you can cause them to want to become someone worthy of that belief. And it's that resonance that causes all kind of allies to accumulate around Touma, a boy who is simply doing what he wants to do in any given situation, what he believes is in his best interests, reaching out his hand and saving who he wants to save. Because in reality, Touma is a selfish person. He doesn't consider things in terms of right or wrong. He isn't necessarily trying to live up to the expectations of others placed upon him, or trying to be a good person in other people's eyes. He's simply doing what he wants to do in any given situation, and that usually just so happens to be reaching out and helping others. It's a special kind of selfishness that is fully compatible with selflessness, a selfish desire to selflessly help others in need. Or as a certain famous magician once put it, love is the law, love under will. Being good is not a goal for him, it's merely a natural consequence of his selfish wish for everyone to be happy. But if his heart aligns with becoming an enemy of the entire world just to save one person, he will still commit to that path all the same. Kamijou Touma is just so overwhelmingly honest, both with himself and to others, telling them his honest beliefs and impressions whether they agree with him or not. This also applies to his appraisals of others, which often results in him telling people things they don't want to hear, or challenging people who he sees as being dishonest with themselves. But he's also the type to tell people the most flattering compliments without a hint of shame, which can easily endear others to him. He's always living life in the present moment to the utmost amount of earnest effort and enthusiasm he can muster, and people see that and want to support and protect him. But that sincerity also easily causes friction with certain people and groups, and so Touma is as quick to make allies as he is enemies. His overwhelmingly honest nature is enough to naturally cause ripples throughout society that can easily destabilize the geopolitical power structures of the world, just from him being himself, trying his best to lead a life without regret. But whenever those enemies surround him, placing him in real danger and putting his idealistic platitudes to the test, the many allies he's made through his words and actions will gather around to support and protect him, to help turn those platitudes into reality, to help Touma achieve the happy ending he's always fighting for. So of course he has a quote-unquote harem of true believers and understanders, and of course that group includes people of all ages and genders. Even I'm a part of it. Nobody's immune to the aspirational charm of a boy that good. Truly the last good boy online. Even though he may be the kind of person everyone wishes they could be, he will always tell everybody that he's the kind of ordinary high school boy you can find anywhere, essentially saying that anybody can do what he does. And in a sense he's right. He represents the very best of humanity that's possible in all of us, a truly self-actualized human being. And we see the impact he has on others all throughout the story too, as the many characters he's interacted with throughout the story are consistently seen trying to be the better version of themselves that Touma inspired in them. And this certain quality he possesses is also the key to how he defeats so many adversaries much more powerful than him. Battles in the Toaru series are all about flashy powers, yes, and they're also extremely compelling games of 5D chess where disadvantaged characters like Touma and Hamazura are forced to pull off insane strategies to survive each deadly encounter. But the thing that really helps Touma defeat his enemies isn't his adept strategic mind, and it isn't his right hand either, it's his words. Battles in Toaru are fought on an ideological level first and foremost, as a clash of minds, perspectives, and ideologies. In reality, very few people in the world actually see themselves as doing wrong. Everyone is trying to live according to their own beliefs, to live a life satisfied with their actions. Those who are most capable of committing atrocities are those who have constructed an internally coherent system of beliefs and justifications that place them as correct no matter what they do. So when it comes time for two characters to clash in the Toaru series, what really decides the result of the battle is who can break through to the other and confront the contradictions in their own beliefs. The true power of the Imagined Breaker isn't to negate supernatural powers, it's to shatter illusions. And when it comes to a battle of words and ideals, very few can come close to the level of honest introspection and cohesive ideals that Kamijou Touma has attained. The few times he's lost a fight were the times where his enemies gave no opportunity for conversation, times in which he was fighting with self-doubt himself, or times when he was unable to truly understand the heart of the person he's fighting. See, understanding a magician's heart and worldview is key to understanding their magic and how to effectively dismantle it. And so this is where the brilliance of Toaru really shines through. In this series more than any other, the capacity to empathize with an enemy's heart is the key to defeating them. Not only to challenge their resolve just enough to cause them to falter and fumble enough to get in close, but also by understanding the ways they think and how it informs their powers. Touma feels no need to kill his enemies because to him, the goal is first and foremost to destroy the illusions shackling them to the path they've chosen, and to ultimately rehabilitate them into being better people. Sometimes Touma is genuinely able to change these people and cause them to rethink their actions and later even become allies of Touma. But sometimes his words don't get through. Some people are just too far gone, too committed to the path they've chosen. And when that happens, when Touma's methods are unable to help people, we sometimes find that the dark side of the world steps in to clean things up and support Touma's ideals from the shadows. People like Accelerator. Accelerator might just be one of the most compelling characters I've ever encountered in all of fiction. Of all of the enormous cast of the Toaru series, nobody has experienced as much consistent character growth and development as Accelerator has. He's a character that has grown alongside the Index series as a whole. Introduced as naught but a caricature of the power-hungry evil lurking in Academy City, we soon realise that there is much more to him as a character when he is violently awakened from the phantasm warping his mind after losing a fight with Touma, forced to reckon with the reality that he's committed genocide against 10,000 sisters. How is one supposed to cope with awakening from an illusion that pervasive to a truth that unbearable? How can one possibly face themselves knowing what they've done? History tells us most people would simply return to living in denial, returning to the sweet illusion that they've done nothing wrong, or perhaps choosing to play the absolute victim and absolving themselves of any and all guilt. But after awakening to this, Accelerator staunchly refuses to turn around and deny reality any longer. As per the epithet of his Espionage, it's a one-way road forward for him. He chooses to carry the guilt and shame of being the world's greatest serial killer for the rest of his life, and the ways in which that guilt influences him changes and develops throughout the series. But no matter what, he can never fully accept himself as a good person after everything he's done. This kind of character writing certainly falls into the trappings of what many online would call edgy character writing, and the parallels to characters like Shadow the Hedgehog aren't lost on me. But I really feel like that kind of complaint just reeks of lazy literary analysis and a reluctance to fully engage with the darker impulses of the human psyche, not wanting to be seen as immature or cringe. In this house, we rid ourselves of the part that cringes, and we embrace honest introspection and emotional processing. Accelerator is a deeply traumatized person, forced to bear the sins of a corrupt society simply because he happened to win the lottery and awaken to the most powerful Esper ability. One could argue he's too hard on himself, that he needs to place more blame on the city that turned him into a monster in the first place. But who can really blame him, when he himself chose to commit genocide by his own two hands, and didn't stop until it was already too late? But before he's given any opportunity to wallow in grief and despair, he's quickly given a new direction in life through meeting Last Order, a member of the Misaka network who decided to reach out to Accelerator and challenge his self-loathing by offering forgiveness and acceptance. These aren't emotions he can so easily accept though, even if they are technically coming from the mouthpiece of the ones he slaughtered, but they do nonetheless leave an impact on him. And so when Last Order's life is threatened by the machinations of an Academy City that can't accept the end of their years of research and development, Accelerator springs to action to save her and the rest of the sisters, time and time again. He learns that even a monster like him can use his powers to save and protect life. Seeing this change within him, Yoshikawa and Yomikawa offer Accelerator sanctuary, allowing him to live in peace with them and Last Order as a strange family unit. And while he reluctantly accepts the living arrangement, it's not so easy for him to rid himself of the spectre of his past tormenting him. These kind-hearted people try their hardest to drag Accelerator up and out of the darkness of the city, but that darkness is unfortunately not yet done with him. Faced with a peace and happiness he feels undeserving of, he finds a strange comfort in descending back into the depths of Academy City's dark side, and so he chooses instead to serve as a champion of darkness, ridding the city of evil through violence, and staining his already blackened hands to protect the smiles of those he sees as existing within the light, people like Last Order and Kamijou Touma. A true anti-hero, though he's very quick to play the tsundere act at anyone suggesting he's acting with any virtue whatsoever, believing himself unworthy of such praise. But therein lies the beauty of Accelerator's character writing. He's a boy without a name, without any place he can comfortably call home, without any reliable or consistent sense of identity, trying his best to live a life without regret and be a person he can be proud of, desperately desiring love and acceptance, but struggling so much because he nonetheless feels unworthy of such things. It's a character journey that so many people I've spoken with can relate so much to. Whether it's people with disability, queer folk who have been rejected by society and their families, or people burdened with heavy guilt or PTSD. Sure, he's the cool edgy boy who plays by his own rules, but most of this is clearly just a front to protect himself from further pain. He's a tortured soul, and in spite of the atrocities he's committed, it's so easy for people from all walks of life to see parts of themselves within Accelerator and the struggles he's endured. Having said all this, I'd like to spend a bit more time focusing on one particular moment during Index Season 3, as I think it really illustrates the very best of Toaru, and really hammers home just about everything I've been talking about in this video. If you haven't watched or read that far, consider this one more spoiler warning. After meeting and losing to Iwas, it is revealed to Accelerator that Last Order's life is once again in danger, and that he must travel to Russia to save her, where Academy City is currently at war with the forces of the Russian Orthodox Church. It's there that Accelerator is hunted down by the physical embodiment of his sins and trauma in Misaka Worst. Having been unable to fully accept the forgiveness of the sisters and begin to heal from his trauma, it becomes very clear that he won't ever hope to heal until he settles things with Misaka Worst first. The battle between them pushes Accelerator's heart to every extreme imaginable, and the overwhelming outburst of conflicting emotions is palpable. It's as if his heart is breaking and reforming several times throughout a single chapter's worth of writing. So let's have a look at what happens. First, we see his fear and shock at having his worst nightmare appear before him, the horrible past that he's been trying so desperately to move on from. Second, we witness his despair at reaching the realization that this won't end until he or Worst kill each other, and then he starts losing all faith in the world.
Ah, I see. So that's the way this whole thing plays out. None of us are gonna get out of this stupid, screwed up situation until somebody dies.
Third, he screams out against this despair in an outburst of impassioned spite, declaring to all the masterminds of Academy City that he is not the monster the world thinks he is, and that he will save the girl in front of him who is just now trying to kill him.
Well, screw a whole load of that! No matter how much we've suffered, this kid has to die, and my mind has to be blown to pieces! Meanwhile, some jerks are off lounging in a nice warm room! Probably having a drink and smiling about how clever they are, congratulating themselves for putting this whole twisted plan of theirs into motion! Well, I'm on to them. If the only way their plan will succeed is if this kid dies, then I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I'll save her life and guarantee their project's failure! You rotten bastards think you have me all figured out, don't you? You look down on me and think all I know how to do is cause pain and kill. I'll show you right now that I am much more than that. I have what it takes to protect something too. Watch! Just watch!
Fourth, having saved Worst but unable to save Last Order, that passion burns away into a wrathful rage as he vows to become a harbinger of death and bring ruin to the horrible world that brought about this outcome.
I want to rid this world of people who would create such a thing! Put an end to the jerks who benefit from it forever! And I mean all of them! Every last disgusting one! Accelerator!
And that's when Kamijou Touma appears. Right now, both Touma and Accelerator are at the lowest points in their lives, with Touma struggling with the self-doubt of questioning if he's in any position to force his ideals or salvation on others after the Battle of Fiamma, and with Accelerator struggling with an overwhelming and paradoxical outburst of emotions. His mind is breaking. He just wants to destroy everything, lamenting over his inability to save Last Order, crying out, asking the world why this cruel fate is unfolding when a hero like Touma could have rushed in to save her, blindly directing his aggression toward the level 0. But seeing Accelerator in such a pitiable state just frustrates Touma, and so he clenches his fist to fight Accelerator once more. Accelerator knows he's not making any sense, but his actions are the ones of someone at the end of their rope, just wanting to give up, lashing out the faintest glimmer of hope presented before him. Touma sees this, and is determined to shatter Accelerator's illusions once more.
What's a hero to you anyway? An average level 0 like me? Do I really look like I'm that big of a deal to anyone? Good guys, bad guys, come on, grow up! Are you saying that in order to help someone, you have to meet specific qualifications? If someone you know is crying and you wish they weren't, or if someone struggling to hold on needs help, but doesn't have the strength to ask, isn't that reason enough? What more do you need to step up? You want special permission or some kind of label? It's no skin off your nose to try and help! If they're important, what's stopping you?
Each time he shouted a word, the boy's power grew.
I don't know what it is you're afraid of or how badly you've been burned by others in the past! But if you wanted to protect that kid, then you should have just done so with your head held high! You have the strength and ability to keep her safe right now! Be proud of that!
He wasn't directing it only toward Accelerator either. It was like the words were dispelling the hesitation that existed within himself as well.
The choice is yours. You can continue protecting her on your own. You can run away and leave it for someone else. Or you can ask for help and we can do this together! I am not going to make this decision for you! Call it arrogance or whatever you want! You're the only one who can decide if she's worth it! No one else can tell you what to do!
A thunderous roar split the air. It was the sound of the Level Zero's fist striking Accelerator directly in the face.
I wanted to defend her, no matter the cost. I had to do something, so I rushed down the only path I knew I could take. I chose the path of evil, and I excelled at living that life. However, in the end, it was the guy who never once had to question whether he was good or evil who managed to come through. Turned out that he was the strongest one of all. I can't protect her with pure evil.
And so, through their conflict, the two boys are able to help each other find their way again. Touma regains within himself the resolve needed to fight Fiamma and reach out to save others through his own selfish desires, and Accelerator is finally able to let go of his fixation on good and evil, abandoning that illusion to focus on doing what he wants to do for the people he cares about. To become someone like Touma, someone who cares not for the distinction between good and evil, someone not so obsessed with how others see him or what he's supposed to be, someone who can begin to honestly accept himself as he is. Is there really any wonder why the queer subset of Toaru fans identify with Accelerator so much? Now, this is hardly the end for Touma or Accelerator's stories, and they're hardly the only important characters in the series, but it's moments like this that fully encapsulate why the series means so much to me and continues to inspire me to this day. It's a story that only grows richer with time. There may be moments in the series where I have to groan, jokes that don't quite land, or questionable fan service that just rubbed me the wrong way, but in spite of that, there's just so much overwhelming good pouring out the pages of the series that I can't not love it. I want to spend time with this world and these characters. I want to see just where Kamijou will take us all next, and how he'll continue to develop this world and these characters we love so much. Because even 55 plus novels into Index, the story hasn't grown stale. These characters in this world are still growing and developing, even after 20 years of continuous storytelling. And I don't think many authors out there can claim as much. Toaru isn't a continuous churning of content from corporate executives who just want to keep milking a cow for long past its expiry date. It's almost entirely a single story written by one single man, one crazy motherfucker who physically can't stop writing. Even after 20 years and hundreds of completed works in Toaru and outside of it, Kamijou still loves writing. It's clear just from reading Toaru just how much fun he has writing for this series, and how he's still inspired with a deep well of ideas that doesn't seem to be drying up anytime soon. Based on everything we've seen, I'm fully convinced that Kamijou will still be writing stories for this series in another 10 years, and maybe even beyond that. Of course, I don't want him to overwork himself, and I wouldn't mind if he slowed down a bit, but as long as he's having so much fun writing for this series, so long as he still has stories he wants to tell in this world, I want to continue supporting him and encouraging him to follow that passion wherever it goes, just like Touma would, and just like he's inspired me to do. So, thank you, Kamijou Kazuma, for creating such an unforgettable series that means so much to me, and just keeps getting better and better with time. But please, for the love of God, give Touma a break. The poor boy is getting hospitalized at least once a week now, and he's still being dragged into fighting world-ending threats every other day. The boy needs to rest!